Hello everyone! So October is ADHD Awareness Month, and that excites me because a lot of people have heard about ADHD but don't know a lot about ADHD, and it shows up differently in many different people. I have been diagnosed with ADHD, and I can see certain traits. When I was in school as a little girl, I would be the little girl that wouldn't cause any problems, but I would be daydreaming. And so I missed a lot of the information that was needed. You can ask my husband, I still miss a lot of the information that is needed in life. And so I find that it's so important to talk about, like, what is it and how do teachers help kids? Because I find a lot of teachers feel just, there's 24 kids and 18 of them have a special something that they need. It's a lot of effort on these teachers' parts. And so Shelby is here. She is the expert. We call ourselves Pinky and the Brain.
You call us that.
Okay, I call us Pinky and the Brain. So this is the brain.
So we addressed this in our last video on ADHD, which was a while ago. But the basic brain understanding of ADD and ADHD is that it's sort of that prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that controls our attention, that decides what to focus on, that inhibits our impulses, that can make sense of different feelings and uses language, words, all that stuff. This part of the brain just isn't quite as active as we need it to be in ADHD. So it's kind of like, if you could imagine, it's sort of like lacking a filter for kids, especially, adults too. It's like you have all this information coming at you, and, for the average person, our brain is able to say, this is important, that's not. I need this, I don't need that. But without that ability, it's really hard to focus or to know what's important and to actually retain what you need to. So that's where we see a lot of the issues coming up in school, particularly academic performance, right? That's a big one, and that's often, one of the first ways I think that ADHD or ADD kind of gets flagged and identified is that perhaps this kid is really having a hard time focusing. So something's going on. But another way, and Connie mentioned it, is sort of that daydreaming kid who perhaps it's not quite as obvious. Maybe they're actually pretty competent in school, but it can still show up in some other ways, especially for girls. Surprisingly, it actually shows up a lot in trouble with friendships and relationships. They're not able to control some of those impulses, so they might say things or act out in ways that can cause them to get into lots of fights, things like that. And so it can be, for a parent, it can be kind of confusing, like why, she seems to do okay at home. Why is she always fighting with her friends? What's going on?
Right.
So it can be so challenging, especially for teachers too, to be able to recognize all these different things and, like you were saying, to meet those needs. But I actually, I have a story, and I remember being in grade 3, and this was sort of my first understanding of it. And my favorite elementary school teacher, we had a young boy in our class who was definitely ADHD, and I remember every day he would be sitting there like tap dancing under his seat, and it would be so loud. And if it wasn't his feet, it was his pencil on the desk. Just something had to be moving, could not sit still. And grade 1, grade 2, the teachers would be sit still, yelling at him, giving him trouble. So my grade 3 teacher, he just went out and cut a little piece of carpet and put it under his desk, so he could tap away and nobody could hear.
Oh, that's so smart.
Because he just recognized that this is what this kid needed to do to be able to sit in a desk for that length of time. That the expectation that he would be able to do that without moving was not realistic, and it wasn't serving the teacher, the rest of the pupils, or the kid, right? So I think it's really finding us being open to understanding that these kids are going to learn it in different ways, and it's not going to look the way that we think it should look or the way that we have been accustomed to it looking.
Yes, we might need to let go of some of our need for these kids to conform.
Yes, exactly. I know lots of youth who are, ADHD, and whether it's they need something to fidget, some of them need music to be able to write a test. Some of them need to take breaks. They need to get up every 15 minutes and walk around and come sit down again.
And that's not and they're not trying to be disrespectful.
No.
Whereas I find some teachers struggle with that because maybe we were brought up in a way that we conform and that's distracting. But a lot of kids today don't find that distracting.
No, exactly. It's, I think it requires a little bit of effort to be creative, but you can really come up with some of those solutions. And there's so much information on sort of like sensory tools and that kind of more tactile stuff that can be really helpful for kids who have a hard time focusing. So, whether it's, having a weighted blanket on their lap that just kind of can make them feel more grounded, or a fidget toy. Fidget spinners, don't get me started on those. But I mean, for real, those started from a really good intention and a good place that, this kid can sit here doing this and it's enough to help them keep calm, right? To help their brain stay engaged the way it needed to be. So I think for teachers, it's really about seeking help, seeking resources, for sure, utilizing, the counselors, the psychologists, all those IPPs, things that you have access to in schools, but also letting the kids teach us.
They will tell you.
They know what works for them.
Yes, they'll tell you what they need.
Yeah.
And the parts that they can't tell you what they need, that's where we can be watching and learning from them. I agree that we need to be listening, because my children tell me all the time, this is what I need. I don't listen to you the first 3 times. They've actually told me that. I don't hear you the first 3 times. And so I've learned to actually not yell at them from across the room like, hey, could you shut the door? I've learned I actually have to go up to them and tell them, could you please shut the door? Right in front of them. And then they hear me. And once I know that, now I know how to communicate.
Yes, exactly. And it's not about them being disrespectful. It's about meeting them where they're at. Yeah, that is such a powerful story. And we would love to hear, especially from teachers, what your experience has been like in the classroom, trying to help, children, youth who are dealing with ADHD or ADD, and some of the strategies that you've come up with that might be helpful for other teachers, parents in the community. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.